Question number 8, and this is different from asking what is the Hardy-Weinberg principle, but we're looking at what does the Hardy-Weinberg principle predict. So the Hardy-Weinberg principle is about change over generations. So it predicts that the frequency of alleles of a particular gene will stay constant from one generation to the next. And then you have to give the conditions of that. So providing that there's no mutation, selection, that the population is large, and that mating is random and there's no migration in or out of that population. And there's your 3 marks on the mark scheme. People who went wrong there usually just said what Hardy-Weinberg is, so they might have given the equation for Hardy-Weinberg, for example, but the question is asking something slightly different. Okay, this table caused a lot of problems due to some misinterpretation. So this table is showing the frequency of a particular allele. So each cat will have 2 copies of each gene, so each cat will have 2 alleles, and this is not showing q squared, 2pq or p squared, it is just showing the frequency of a particular allele. That's going to be important in the next question. White cats are deaf. Would the Hardy-Weinberg principle hold true for this? So if you've given the correct answer to this previous question, what we're talking about here is if a cat is deaf, there is a selection pressure. So Hardy-Weinberg would not hold true for white cats because they are at a selective disadvantage. So you have 2 marking points there. The first one got mentioned. White cats are likely to be selected against. Nice examples, for example, a white cat might be more likely to be run over by a car. If it's deaf, it won't hear danger coming. Therefore, it's less likely to pass the allele on to the next generation, which means we'll get a reduction in allele frequency. Don't forget that second mark. Lots of people, slightly alarmingly, write, and therefore there will be no evolution. So yes, evolution is about allele frequency change, but when we're talking about Hardy-Weinberg, we need to be very clear about, we're talking about a mathematical model here that predicts that there will be no allele frequency change over time. Question C, what's the evidence from the table that non-agouti and blotched alleles are different genes? Okay, if we're thinking about alleles as different genes, remember Hardy-Weinberg is only for when you've got 2 alleles for a single gene. So that means that the frequency, if you add them together, should add up to 1. If we look at, for example, Paris, 0.71 plus 0.78 adds up to more than 1, which means that they cannot be the same gene. And there's your mark scheme point. Okay, finally, this last question, people often got wrong simply because they were not reading the table correctly. So hair length in cats is determined by a single gene with 2 alleles. The allele for long hair is recessive and the allele for short hair is dominant. Using the information, use Hardy-Weinberg to estimate the percentage of cats in London that are heterozygous for hair length. Now, you do not need to do the whole equation here. The important thing here is, can you recognise where we have Q? The table gives you allele frequencies. Okay, now Q squared is equal to the homozygous recessive genotype. Instead, what you're getting here, you're not being given frequency or proportion of cats that are homozygous recessive. You're actually being given the values for Q and P. So we've been told that long-haired, I think, is recessive. So long-haired is recessive, short hair is dominant. So long-haired, this number here is actually just Q. You do not need to square root it because that is the frequency of the recessive allele. So what you've got is Q, and so you can go straight in at Q equals 0.33. Therefore, P must equal 1 minus Q, which is equal to 0.67. And you can ask for the heterozygous, so 2PQ equals 0.33 times 0.67, which will give you 0.44. And you can ask for a percentage, so that is 44% of cats should be heterozygous. So make sure you read those questions really carefully. An awful lot of people getting tripped up by that one. To get 1 mark, you had to identify that you knew that Q was 0.33 and P was 0.67.